Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. Our topics today is reverse proxy. What is a reverse proxy? Why do I need that? And how does the load balancer fill that? And then we look into a little bit of API deep dive. What can you do with API, how it's done, and I will demo that, of course, as well. Great. So the agenda first, as usual for this type of webinar, we will talk about the technical camping updates and channel. Then, as I just mentioned, the two topics, why do I need a reverse proxy and API deep dive. And the questionnaire will be emailed to you after the webinar. So please answer the questions so we can react on those pretty good. First things are the next campings and the dates. So today, 9th of May is right now. So that's our topic from today. The next appointment or date will be the 12th of September. So this is all after all of the summer holiday vacations and all of that. And the topic is going to be Edge Security Pack MFA options and how LoadMaster WAF can help you to force all the PCI DSS requirements that have been changed this year for credit cards, transactions, and so on. And I will demonstrate how the LoadMaster WAF can assist with enforcing those. And then the last date for the year will be November 11th. I will announce the topic in September. Also for partners that have gone through the 2-day training class with LoadMaster, we're going to do a master class, which is a 4-day course, deep dive technical course for partners that want to educate further and would like to be able to do professional services themselves to customers. In September, there will be a master class. And if I don't get enough people in Germany, then I'm trying to get people all of Europe together, and then I will have it in English. I don't mind that. So there will be a masterclass, and I hope to fill it up with enough people that are interested. Cool. I also added a slide for you, or I updated the slide for you with the links to the last webinars that we had. As you see, these were all the webinars that were delivered in the past. And now this is the link for the one I did in March. Good. To everyone who's new and doesn't know me yet, so this crazy guy is me. So my name is Renard. I'm broadcasting now here from the middle of Germany. I'm the principal pre-sales engineer for the EMEA region, mainly focusing on Benelux, France, and DACH region on the LoadMaster product. And if my colleague Mike is covering all the other regions that I don't cover, and if one of us is in vacation, the other one will cover for each other. So from that perspective, we are the two helping you with all your LoadMaster questions all over Europe. Now, I like new topics, so if there's anything that you come up with, that you struggle with, that you like to have a little webinar session, half an hour, and a demo and stuff like that on, let me know. I'm always looking for new topics to deliver, so any idea will help. Anything you might be challenged with from a customer side, or you might remember a challenge that you were not able to fulfill or you didn't know how, let me know. I'm happy to look into it, and maybe it turns into a topic we can handle in one of those technical camping sessions. Right, now that finalizes the updates to the channel. Here we go with our first topic today. Why a reverse proxy and what the heck is a reverse proxy in the first place? Now, I just took a slide from our webpage. Actually, the LoadMaster is a high-performance application delivery controller and load balancer that enhance availability, scalability, performance, and security. Now, why would I make a statement like that? A reverse proxy itself, and I think I've hidden the slide, yeah, I did, is a term used for a load balancer that sits in front of one or multiple services, like a web server, for example. Your clients are connecting to that reverse proxy, and the reverse proxy is balancing those requests to your target systems. The benefit, obviously, is that your client is not directly connected to your server, and you can hide your server securely behind this appliance. Now, there is multiple different ways of connecting. So there's network traffic, there can be DNS resolution traffic as well. Then you have multiple options with stickiness and different schedule methods and so on. But the main reason why you would put a reverse proxy in front of your environment is actually this. You want to make sure your client requests are only sent to servers that are actually available, right? So you need health check to do that on a UDP or TCP level or an application health checks. I always say do the health check as close to your application as possible to make sure that you don't get a false positive, right? So let me put some light on that. If I do a layer 4 TCP check, I will know if the port is open or not of my application server, right? So that's great. The load balancer shows green, a port is open. But the port being open does not mean that the application behind, which I like to reach as a client, is actually running. The port can still be open even though my application is not running, right? So that means I have a false positive health check. I see everything green, it looks all good, but still my request doesn't get answered. So the health check should be as close to the application as possible. So if the clients, for example, do a GET request, a web request to a specific URL with a specific directory and so on, make sure your health check does the same thing. So that if the application is not running, that you actually know and we don't send anyone to that anymore. So availability. Then you like to have the option to be able to scale, right? If there's more demand, you need a second server and a third and so on and so on and so on. So you like to be able to scale up without interfering, without adding trouble to the whole environment, right? So you need to be able to scale up and down. If you want to put a server in maintenance, sure, no problem. The other ones can still handle it. The user in the front should not notice that at all. So this is what I mean with scalability. Then you might want additional features. Reverse proxy, also load balancer nowadays, its term. There was a second term generated in 2004, I think, called ADC, Application Delivery Controller. What that actually means is an application delivery controller is a reverse proxy with additional features like security features, pre-authentication, web application firewall. Some vendors like Barracuda took it to a different level and said, yeah, we don't do normal pre-authentication stuff and a normal WAF. No, we do an entire firewall. So they went that route. Other vendors went slightly different route, but all of them added extra value to the reverse proxy functionality. So LoadMaster did as well. Then you might want to change your performance. You want to offload SSL traffic so that your server doesn't have to do that. You might want to modify traffic headers or URL or stuff like that. So in order to make sure clients get less redirects, or they request A, but on the server you ask for B instead. Or you want to hide your structure of your folders and subfolders and so on. And then obviously you want everything in one device to control that. You want to have the insight to that. You want to see, when is my server available? How's the health? What is the performance? How many requests is that server handling? Maybe you want to limit it, that it can only handle a certain amount, and so on. So this is all what you expect for an application delivery, right? And this is what reverse proxy, specifically here in this case, the load balancer, can help you with. Now, I put some fancy slides in here as well out of the sales deck. So how can I now make my application experience better for my users, right? I need to make sure that my application is highly available and performs very well. I need to make sure that the application is not interrupted in between. I want to secure it, and I want to also limit access so that not everyone is allowed to use it. And then, if possible, I even want this in multiple environments. I might have on-prem, I might have something in the cloud, I might have a private cloud, I might have my application in all worlds, and I want to combine it. So this is now also an option, how to enhance your application delivery. If my data center goes down, something else or an alternative source will pick it up instead, and my clients will still be served. What also need to be said is the definition on what is server load balancing. So server load balancing means you have a single reverse proxy that decides what server is taking the traffic on. So this helps you with the availability, the scalability, and also with the resilience. So if one server dies, your application is still on, right? Most of them can do content matching and modify policies if you set that. You would also do health checking and scheduling, SSL termination, maybe with multiple certificates and even SNI support. And some of them can even use the RAM for caching and compression purposes. So this is all called server load balancing. Now, if you look a bit broader, there's also something called global server load balancing. So just imagine normal server load balancing and now do a step out to the global picture. You can do that to multiple data centers. So how does that work? It works through DNS resolution. So the DNS request hits the reverse proxy and port 53, and it will be answered with an A record. Now, it's not like a normal DNS bouncing out the A records. No, instead, it's doing a health check to make sure that the target, the A record target, is actually available. And only if it's available, then I send it to a client to connect to. So why would I need something like that? Pretty simple. I want to make sure that I can get rid of server overload to make sure I balance all my requests between multiple data centers or multiple DMZs. I could have a disaster recovery option, so I send everything to the main data center, but if that is not there, then it goes to my disaster recovery center. Or I could even combine multiple worlds. I could say, hey, I have one data center. Let's say here London it's on-prem. Let's say New York is a private cloud, and let's say here the one called Singapore is actually a public cloud. So I can bounce my requests between those three, even in hierarchy if I will use disaster recovery options. So that's like fixed waiting, to make sure that if disaster happens, my on-premise site goes down, everything goes into the private cloud. And if that also goes down for whatever reason, I still have the public cloud to take over. That means my application is always on. And this is what customers want nowadays, right? Now, I mentioned the phrase or the term web application firewall, short WAF. What the heck is that? So web application firewall is a real-time threat protection, so that all the requests going through this module are checked against a core rule set, and your own rules. If you want to add more rules to it, that's fine. And if something suspicious is found, it will be denied, and the request does not pass through and will not arrive at the server side. It also helps for the compliance regulations on the PCI DSS. It helps against data loss, and it gives you great insight because you get lots of logs on what is requested, why is it requested, and what rule has triggered, and so on. And there is the core rule set installed, which helps you to mitigate against the OWASP top 10 risk. Another thing I mentioned earlier on was about pre-authentication. So we call our engine ESP. That's short for Edge Security Pack. It was built as a TMG replacement or alternative. So when the TMG was canceled, that was the load balancing solution Microsoft offered at one stage. We wanted to have also the ability to do pre-authentication, single sign-on options, and with that engine, we collect user information like username, password, or multi-factor authentication, so the multi-factor as well. We collect all of that, send that to the authentication provider. They give the green light or the red light. And depending if it's green, the request will be asked from the server. If not, you will be denied. You cannot go further. This is just a different picture just to demonstrate the different options you have with pre-authentication. So you could do form-based login. You can even customize your login form. We could use dual-factor authentication. You can use client certificates, basic NTLM, OIDC, SAML. So there are lots of different options. So information are collected, are sent to the identity provider. Of course, if you use OIDC, it's a cloud identity provider, and only if that is successful, then the request is sent to the application server. Now, what other benefits do I have from using a reverse proxy? Yeah, so stuff like protecting against security breaches, right? So, for example, I want to deny IP addresses that are known to be bad. Yeah, we can help you with that. You might want to use a rate limiting to make sure you don't get flooded for a specific service. Yeah, we can help you with that too. You might want an application firewall to protect against OWASP top 10, right? As I just mentioned. You might want a pre-authentication to make sure it's only your users that are allowed to use that application. But on top of that, you might want to use a capture as well to make sure that there's no bot reaching in. Or you want to use user groups that only specific users out of a certain group can log in and so on. And then you might want to use the zero trust access, network access idea that I think I mentioned in another webinar recently, where you use loads of different LoadMaster functionalities, for example, the authentication option and content rules and so on, to create an access policy that only certain clients from certain networks are allowed to connect to certain resources and perform certain tasks and so on. So that can all be limited. This is what the zero trust access idea is. So that's looks like this. So you have different specific apps from devices with different users, and only after they pass certain security levels, only then can they access certain for them allowed resources and so on. Now, I should not have done that. I should not have moved that. Okay, it's a mismatch. I should have mentioned that earlier. These are actually the OWASP top 10s, right? So what actually is meant with that? So it's injections, security misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, stuff like that. So SEC, loads of different things that would trigger the WAF to act. And last but not least, I think it's sometimes a topic that's getting easily forgotten, but certificates. Who has not run into any issues with certificates yet? I guess none of you had not had any issues so far with that. I mean, the life cycle of certificates is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. I heard that the latest ideas is that the certificate only lives for 3 months in future and then has to be changed. Some people even spoke to me and said, yeah, they consider having a certificate replacement every month, which gets painful, right? So that's definitely something that needs to be automated. But if the certificate is on the LoadMaster, you don't need to worry about the server certificate unless you use extended protection. But if you don't use extended protection, your server certificate does not really matter. As long as the LoadMaster certificate is there, your client will have no certificate warning, and the LoadMaster does not really care if the server certificate is still valid or not. So from that perspective, it saves you some trouble. And we have now included in our LoadMaster 360 tool that lifetime of the certificate. So you get alarms when the certificate is going to expire. So you know in advance so that you can get a new certificate and replace it, so that you don't run into the issue that you have expired certificates in your applications. Now, I collect some links for that. And as I do demonstration, what's the time? Oh, we do have time for that. So let me show you then what a LoadMaster looks like for everyone who has not seen one yet. Now, so this is my web GUI. And what do I need the load balancer for? Pretty simple. I'm creating an endpoint, so an application like this one here. And all my clients go to this endpoint. And then the request they send to the load balancer will be sent to application server 1 and application server 2 on a different port. Actually, I'm doing SSL offloading here. You see there's ESP involved as well. So let's just have a look what this is all involving. So I'm using an endpoint. I have a pre-authentication. And I should have requested the proper page. I get to my application server. You see I'm coming now from the load balancer. Index was requested, even though you don't see index here. There's a rule modification. And this was the virtual service I was using. So just to show you again, 111 and 443. And this is my original client IP address that I used. And I got pre-authenticated. So all of that is in. And I have now my application server behind the load balancer. I'm not connecting to it directly. I go to the load balancer and get sent to this server. Right. And if that server now, for whatever reason, dies, you see now I'm on server 2 instead, right? So that means I have the resilience and availability given straight away. And my user, now me as a user here, I don't have any impact from my application server 1 dying. I still get my page served or my application delivered. So in a nutshell, that's what you need a reverse proxy for. So you have options. Let's go into that. You have options to use different scheduling methods. So round robin, weighted round robin, least connections, so that one with the least connections on the load balancer gets the next one. You can weight that as well. There's an adaptive options where you can run a script on your server and the load balancer is asking for a certain port number and checking what value the script returns. You can use fixed weighting. The one with the highest weight gets everything. Weighted response time, my personal favorite. The one that's responding the quickest to a health check will get the next request. Everyone who is slower, obviously, is busy with something else, not LoadMaster related, so I will not bother them that much. And then there are more fancy ones as well. You can extra ports, you can add extra ports, you can use persistence to make sure after the first connection I remain with that same server. You see the limiting options I mentioned earlier against DDoS and flooding attacks. You have the SSL properties to offload your traffic, to make sure you are BSI conform by using the right cipher sets the client is allowed to use, for example. You can do loads of modifications and selections, caching and compression. You can add other headers. So there's lots of options. You can limit who is allowed and who is not allowed to my application. And then there's the WAF pre-authentication options as well. So loads of different things reverse proxy can assist you with to secure your target servers in the back. Good. I don't see any chat and any questions, so we keep going then. Let's go into the API options.
Renar, sorry to interrupt. Yeah. There's one question.
Oh, I see. Martin, cool. Access, so it seems this will not work as a third authority. I'm not sure if I get your question, Martin. So you want to know if I can change the certificates on the load balancer? Replace them with a new one? Or is it more, okay, yeah, that was actually something I was going to display now with the API in a minute. So yes, you can, there's a manual way to do that, right? You can manually do the certificates. Here you go. I can import my SSL certificates and my intermediates and so on, and you see the runtime of it as well. And here I can also replace the certificate with a new one. That means I keep the identifier by replacing. If I do a new identifier, I have an entirely new certificate as well. That's also possible. But personally, I like the replacement option because then I don't need to assign the certificate again. It stays assigned already. But yeah, you can replace the certificate on the load balancer, but I was going to show that in the next part with the APIs. So let's run into that. So first of all, everything you can do in the GUI on the load balancer manually, you can also do via API call. Sometimes I think with API, you can actually do even more here and there than you can do in the GUI itself. For example, in the GUI, you might be limited in the amount of characters you can enter in a field. With a GUI, that limit might be there, but with the API, it might not be. So I have some things specific for geo-balancing where I can enter a much larger field than in the GUI. The next thing is because you can talk with the API to a LoadMaster specifically, you can do things, for example, assigning a local cert to the standby unit AHA, which you cannot do in the GUI. You need to do failover first for that. So with an API, you can do that easily straight away. Now, what options of API do we have? We have the normal API version, so GET request with an API sent to the load balancer, and it does it. We also have API version 2, which is a post request, and then you can enter stuff in a JSON format and bounce it to the load balancer. I personally like that one a lot. There was a Java API add-on so that we can use Java API. It's deprecated, but the add-on is still available to download. We have a PowerShell add-on that you can install modules in PowerShell so that PowerShell knows how to talk to the load balancer. Same with Python. There is a GitHub for PowerShell, also for Terraform, for AWS and Azure. And at the moment, I'm working with one customer in a professional service specifically on certificates as well, because you just mentioned that, Martin, on Ansible. So for that specific customer, we let Ansible contact the load balancer, load the certificates, check how long the certificate is still valid. If it's longer than 10 days, nothing will happen. If it's not longer than 10 days, Ansible will go to the certification authority, will request a new certificate, store it in the vault, and install it on all the load balancers that should hold this certificate and update that. So little project I'm working with that customer right now to get that done in Ansible via API calls and so on. Right. So what you need in order to do API is in the certificate security option remote access menu, you need to enable API in the first place. Otherwise, the load balancer will not take the API request. Okay, with that said, bear a second, there's another question. Yannick, I just read it out for everyone. Is it possible for the load balancer to do geo-steering, as in some from EU connecting to EU server and people from North America connecting to North American servers? Yes, Yannick, that's absolutely possible. What I will do right now, I will continue with the API for now so that I can do the demo and so on. And afterwards, at the end of this webinar, I'm happy to show you the option for the geo balancing, if that is okay, because it's not specifically the target or the topic for today. So, but I want to answer that, and I will demo that to you right at the end of this session. Yeah, good. Now, back to our topics. So, RESTful API, what do they look like? So I said earlier on in version 1, a request is a simple get command. You connect to the load balancer /access/ and then it's your command you want to do. So loads of the APIs are actually available for get, which means read out a certain parameter and tell me what value you have. Or you use set, saying for a certain parameter, I want the value XYZ to be set, right? So this is the basic one. But there's also, instead of get and set, which is, I would say, 75 to 80% of all the things on the load balancer are get and set things. But there's also other things like add a virtual service or modify a virtual service, right? So delete a virtual service or add a real server. So these are things that are slightly different, but mainly get and set are the ones you need to use. A second sample here in this this version, I specifically took that now because that was the one I mentioned earlier about the standby unit in a HA environment, and you want to assign a local certificate to it, right? You can't do that in the web GUI, but with this request here, you can actually do it. So set for your local search, so that's a parameter, the value, and then you put in the name of the identifier you have installed into the load balancer HA pair. And then it will set this as its local cert. Alternatively, you have API version 2, which is this down here. So it's a post, also the LoadMaster address access v2, so that's version 2. And then you have a body you send. You have payload that you send with your request. And here it's a certain API key, so you can also use username and password, by the way, but I prefer the API key. And then your command, what you want to do here in this case, it want to do a ping on IPv6, and you put in the address, and it will now perform a ping for this address and gives you the result back. Good. Now, then you might want to use APIs to do monitoring. So sometimes you have a monitoring tool and that wants to call for certain status information of the load balancer. So rather than using SNMP, you might want to use API instead. So you can, for example, check, hey, how is your node health going, right? So you put in the API key with your token and you call in for the stats and you get back what's the current CPU amount, what's the current RAM, what's your disk usage for each partition, right? And what's the general status, so you can recall all of those information. Similar for the HA status. Who's active one right now? Who's passive one, right? Similar for the virtual service statistics. So how many active connections or how many connections per second for a certain real server or for a certain virtual service, you find all of that in those statistics. And what's my specific status for a certain virtual service here, in this case, service ID 493. So what's the status of that thing? Is it available? Is it not available? How many requests go through that specifically through? So these are just samples, what monitoring could look like with an API call. Then sometimes you have calls with certain files, right? So for example, I want to install a firmware patch via API. So you want to do a post, you have a binary file with your firmware file, and you can use API to upload your firmware. Or you want to replace or install a new one or replace an existing certificate, right? You have your certificate file. PFX works very well because with binary, I never got it working with certificate and key files. So that always is a trouble, but if you have a certificate like PFX where both are included into one file, then this API works pretty nice. There's another question, 1 second, Assad. Does the API to call for data monitoring might provide more information than the actual monitoring section from the load balancer? Yeah, it does. SNMP also gives you more data than the GUI on the load balancer. So yeah. Right. Okay, now what else? Get and set. Yeah, I mentioned earlier, most of them are get and set. So this is what those look like in version 1. Get me your hostname, and in here, set for the hostname a certain value, right? I also did some links for you on that to get the documentation for that. And now I was going to use the time, which is now pretty much, and I was going to show you all of these things right now with API. Right. So let me just keep this open on a different screen that I don't forget any of those. There we go. And let's get the lab up. There we go. Right. So I'm not starting in that order. So let's, for example, create a virtual service, modify it afterwards, and add a real server to it. So maybe we start with those things. So right now, you see these are my services I have here right now. So it's not that much. So let's create a new service on 250. So I'm going to the standby now because I don't want to log in again. So this is my standby unit. Right now it's doing nothing. And I can tell him I want to create a new virtual service, right? Here we go. I just said we want to use 250. I want it on TCP, protocol TCP, port 80. And the nickname is now, what do I do as nickname? Kemping 9th May, American keyboard, 9th May 2025. Here we go. Now, it will ask me for authentication. Fair enough. File, my password. And yeah, now he's telling me I made a mistake. Fair enough. The command is not proto, it's just prot. There we go. That's better. And now it tells me, yes, cool. 200, okay, I created a service for you. Right now, this virtual service is down. I have it created. It has the ID 27, and all of these other settings are default settings. I have not made any changes to that. Okay, so let's have a look. How does that look like? Refresh my GUI. Oh, there, 250. I have a new service created with that name. So far, so good. Now, the next. Oh, sorry. We now want to modify this virtual service. So you can either modify it by saying, I want to modify the VS with that IP for that protocol and with that port. And now you just put in the values you want. So for example, default. Let me just double check. You can actually go down here. How bad? I'm not remembering the right command for it. Wait a sec. Default gateway. I don't see it right now. I think it was gateway. If not, it will tell us in a second. So right now, just again, for you to see, all normal values. So here's nothing in there right now. And if I don't have messed up my naming, I would now have modified. I have messed up my naming. So oh, come on. Right, let's do something else just to show you. Enable ESP. Today's not my day. I should have. Ah, there we go. Now, much better. So enable ESP to Y for yes. Here we go. So now ESP is enabled, and there you go. ESP is enabled, and I have set my virtual host that's allowed. So yes, I can do all of that on the standby machine, changing stuff. Now we can also add real server to this. So now add a real server to the VS with, we said early on, it's ID number 27. So let's do that. Shorten all of this away. So to VIP 27. I want to add real server with the name app1.progressdemo.com and real server port 8080. Now I have a real server added. So let's have a look. There we go. My reserver is added behind my virtual service. It's not red, not green right now because my health check was not set correctly. If I would change that, it probably comes up, but that could have been done through the script before. So, but that way you can add or take down servers and make changes to your virtual service. Right. Now, with that, I have shown you how to create a virtual service, how to modify settings within it, and how to add a real server to it. Now let's have a look into the GET requests, right? So here, GET the parameter, what is interesting right now. Hostname. And we get the result. This guy is called VLM A2. Or you can also say, I want to see time zone. There you go. I have it set to Europe Berlin, right? Or NTP, which is my NTP server right now. Oh, come on. Of course, I don't have all commands by hand. NTP host. Yeah, I could have. There you go. I have an NTP host. Now we can change the get to a set and tell him, okay, you do now use a different NTP server. Use dc.progressdemo.com, but you also use 8.8.8.8 or ntp.pool.europe.org. Now he will perform that and NTP takes a while. He will check if we can actually reach that. And now he corrected the time. So let's have a look. Have we changed our time server? Yeah, there you go. All of the entries are made. Right. Now, what else do we have on the list? A reboot. Oh yeah, reboot is cool. Reboot is cool. So very simple. There you go. Look, my machine is now rebooting. That's cool. What you can also do pretty nicely is you can get a backup file. You don't need to have FTP set for automated backups and stuff. You can simply use an API key to pull a backup down. There you go. My backup is now downloaded. So that way you have access to your things. Okay. So now I've shown you a reboot, get set commands, virtual service commands. So let's do something more fun right now. And for that, hopefully it works. I have Postman here. There you go. Some people left us. That's a pity. My performance must be not so nice now. Right. Here we go. So what am I doing with this request? I'm contacting my shared address. Come on. SHA-A. So this is my HA pair we just went onto. And in the body, I'm saying now for BAL, one for all, this is a geo request actually, add a new, or this is actually not a geo request, it's this SSO domain to be created. So what else do we have? I want the certificate right now. Syslog info, nope. Add a new service, no, we don't need that either. Here we go. So I can connect the machine and can replace an existing certificate with a new one or just add a new certificate. So in this case, rather than uploading a file, I have turned that PFX into base 64. And I can now say, yeah, sure, we go to my LoadMaster, SHA-A, and I want him to create a new certificate, and the identifier should be Kemping 9525, which is date today. And we can pass that in. Wait a sec. Replace. No, I don't want to replace anything. I want to create it new. So that was my bad. Sorry for that. So he tried to find that existing certificate, which wasn't there yet because I just made up the name. So now I imported a new certificate with that name. So let's have a look. Here we go. We now have a certificate installed with that name. So the file I used is expired, fair enough, but I imported a new certificate into the load balancer. Right, so we have the certificate part done. Now, firmware. Oh yeah. For the firmware, I want to show you PowerShell, just to show something as well. Our standby machine we went to look at a minute ago, this standby guy, he should not be on the latest version anyway. Let's have a look. 61, okay, they're both on 61, that's fine with me. Now, what versions do I have available right now? Bear a minute with me. Progress Camp firmware. Okay, 61 is the one I have available right now. Let's download the latest version, which is 62. Firmware patch 62. I'm already on 61, so I don't need any of this. I can get the patch immediately. Great. So let me place that in my firmware folder. There you go. That's the latest version. And now I'm using PowerShell. I don't use really the PowerShell commands. I'm actually using a normal curl request here in this sample. So there you see, I'm importing a CVS file. So that's simply because I have two LoadMasters, I want to do this now on and not only on one. And I'm doing my request for each load balancer. Run this command. So that's URI. And then the command is do the post and take also the file. Wait, didn't I change that? File path. Oh yeah. Okay. Now, and the file path is this guy here, which I need to modify now because we have just installed the new one. Come on. Good. And the CVS file, just for you to see. Should be parameters. There you go, parameters. So this is the guy. And in there I have, this is for the basic installation to do everything. I changed him, sugar. So I want the .11 actually to be updated. Great. Okay. So .11 and .12, yeah. And now we just run the script. Service info. What? Okay. When did I change that? Try again. Do I have a spelling mistake? Bear with me. Yeah, parameters. Come on. There we go. Stupid mistake. All right. That's when you play with too many scripts for too long. Ah, this is the one. Here we go. Much better. Okay. My bad. Data string. Yeah, I played around with different things to put it into a data string, to put it into different versions. But it turned out post request, and you need to say in the post that you sent the file. I can pass it on to you again. So it's not, should be that. I will play with it again, but that's normally how you can update the firmware. I'm just a bit aware of the time because I wanted to show that one thing for Assad there. I will pass that on to our colleague. She will send that link out to you with the right command. Norman, documentation. Norman, actually, I showed you earlier where this is found. Look at this. There, I have it included in the slides, so you get the link directly. Martin, sub VSs don't care about your certificate, so you need to assign the certificate to a certain VIP. That's the command, not to the sub VS, because the sub VS have nothing to do with their certificates. They're done on the main VS. But if you want to me to show you the certificate, how to assign it to the main VS, I can actually do that. So let's go to the RESTful API certificates. Here we go. So installing a certificate, return the blob, upload. We already did that, and very likely I need to go to the VIP to assign it. 1 second. Virtual service. Here we go. Actually not so complicated because it's pretty simple. Here we go. You just do modify for your virtual service, and then you do cert file and you specify your certification file you want to have. So let's do that in the lab. Here we go. So let's use a normal file. So right now, this is the new identifier we just imported a minute ago, right? It's not assigned to anything right now. So let's take our virtual service we just built a little while back, mod VS, the VS we want to, come on, American keyboard, where is that question mark? There we go. The VS we want to modify is 27, and come on, cert file is the one we just created. Yeah, why would it be invalid? Who has an idea? Very simple. We don't have SSL enabled, right? So let's check the thing. There are more parameters here. So cipher set, SSL re-encrypt need to be, yeah, that's the one, SSL acceleration. We need to enable that first, and then we can actually enter the certificate. So now I have SSL turned on and I have the certificate assigned. So let's have a look. You see, certificate assigned, SSL is on. When you go into it, we have it turned on and our Kemping certificate is installed. I hope that was what you wanted to see, Martin. Good. Now, last question, Assad. Sorry for the wait time. So I have the load balancer here with global balancing. He's allowed to answer for DNS request. So this is my FQDN I have right here, and these are the target IPs I can provide as a return to resolve, right? So right now this is based on fixed waiting. So if that is available, I send only this out and then following the cascade, right? But rather than that option, you could also use location-based answer, okay? And now I can assign, for example, let's presume this is Europe, this is New York, and this is Singapore, like we had early on in the slides. And now I can say, okay, I want everywhere in Europe request going to my location A. So that means if the source IP requesting this DNS resolution is from Europe, this will be the answer. And here I put in if it's everywhere and North America and South America, so any US based, then it will go there, giving the fact it's available. And the last one gets everywhere and Asia, for example. It's just as an option. So now, based on the source where the request comes from, we make a decision where the journey goes. It's not only the request where they come from, it's also is the target available. So right now here, this guy is not available. So requests from Asia and Oceania cannot be resolved right now because there's no rule for it. But you might have noticed I put everywhere into the other ones as well. Everywhere is like a default rule, okay? So that means if the source is not used up from any other rule, then everywhere can take it. So that means when this guy is down, any of the other two is allowed to take on Asia and Oceania right now. But for example, here now I have Europe in here, and New York is on as well, right? So that's this way. That means requests from Europe, they will stay with Europe as long as it's available. So they will never ever now go to New York, right? Because Europe is there. So they have priority. The everywhere is only taking if the specific rule cannot be triggered. Only then the everywhere comes into place. So that means as long as this guy here this guy is online, all requests from America and South America are answered here. Only when this guy dies, then the American request will be handled here. Okay, so that I hope that answers your question, Assad.
Renar, sorry to interrupt. We're running a little bit over time.
I know. I
Okay.
was just hoping that I get a response now, and that was actually what I wanted to show. I'm actually
That's good.
finished, to be honest. So we have done the demo, and I'm actually finished. So happy days. But Michaela, you will pass on the one request I will play with that a minute ago, so that they can see how to update the firmware. I need to. That didn't work in the demo. I want to at least give the right command to them. Cool. Great. Yeah. So it was a pleasure talking to you guys. I wish you a nice weekend, and hopefully you join me in September for the next webinar. Bye bye, guys.